VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker, back on our now traditional Saturday night episode. We're here with Sean Kenner. He was on, about 3 weeks ago before the draft. We mixed it up a little bit. How are you, man?
Man, I'm great. I'm feeling good after the draft. We got my guy, JJ McCarthy, quarterback of the future. You got to feel great.
Did you see the Thor Nystrom tweet a couple hours ago, maybe an hour ago, that said no Minnesota sports team has lost since JJ McCarthy was drafted?
Hey, man, winners win.
Yeah,
winners win.
Yep, it's a vibe now. All right, and welcome, Brevin, our traditional Saturday night co-host. How are you?
Pretty good. Like I was telling you guys, I'm a little tired. I was telling you guys pre-show, but so if I sound like incoherent, we recorded Social earlier today, and there was times I don't think I made any sense, but I feel a little bit better now. So if I sound like dumb, apologies.
All right, we'll get through it. The first thing, Sean, this has kind of been a little vague, but I believe the NFL schedule will be released this week. The kicker here is we know who the Vikings play, but it's always juicy to figure out when they play these teams, who they're going to play in London. So with your advanced Vikings mind, I want to ask you, sir, when the schedule comes out, what are you going to be looking for first?
Obviously the kind of first things you look for are the primetime games. I think that's one of the first things that everybody looks for. When are we playing in primetime? How often are we playing in primetime? And then secondly, we're looking at divisional opponents. You know, when do we play Green Bay first? I think that's usually the first one that pops up. Obviously, we want to see when are we going to be playing the Lions, defending NFC North champions. And then, Caleb Williams coming to the Chicago Bears. We're going to be looking at that one too. Me personally, though, because I have specific games that I want to be at and I want to go to. So obviously the home opener. Got to know when we're doing the home opener. If we're going to get it week 1 this year, like we've got it, I think the past 3 years, I think we've been week 1 home opener every single year. So eventually it's going to be a week 2 or week 3 home opener coming up. So I'm going to be looking for that because we're going to be doing Skull Fest, a little foreshadowing there like we kind of talked about before. And then also Nashville. I'm looking at Nashville because that's a big game that I want to go to. And I want to check out Nashville, man, make it a whole little trip. And then obviously LA, since I'm out here in California, that's obviously one I'm going to go to as well. So yeah, LA is going to be a big one too. So LA, Nashville, and the home opener for me personally, those are the ones I'm looking for first.
I want to get this out in the open. I was on a show earlier this week, and you mentioned primetime games. And this came to mind here in the last couple minutes. You know how, here's what I'm looking for the McCarthy era. You know how when, as Vikings fans, and I guess because of the Kirk Cousins narrative as of late, whenever we see a primetime game on the road, or for that matter, an outdoor game on grass, usually you can say, oh God, probably going to lose that one. I want that era of Vikings football to be done. That is what I want the most out of JJ McCarthy. I can tell you in the last 20 years, whenever the schedule comes out and I see, on the road at the blah, blah, blahs, you could pick any good team. I'll be like, well, that's a lot. At Philadelphia, yep, that's an L. We're going to be 1-1. I don't want to feel that way anymore. I don't want it to feel like a miracle when they win a Monday Night Football game on the road. And believe it or not, this is not a Kirk Cousins thing. It's a Vikings thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so a Vikings thing.
If I can ask one thing of the blossoming of the McCarthy era, I know it won't be this year, but in general is I want to, hey, we're going on the road to the Cincinnati Bengals Sunday Night Football. I want to look at you guys on the podcast 2 days before and be like, you know what, we can beat those bastards. And right now, even like with Kirk, without Kirk, with McCarthy, I'll see it and go, oh God, well, that one will be a loss. And then we'll wait for the noon home game and we'll get them next time. So that is my knee-jerk reaction. I also like to look from the Midwest perspective of which games, like when the Colts game will be and win the Nashville games, because we Midwesterners don't have a problem driving all over the place. So I'd like to take a road trip to either Nashville or Indianapolis. I'll look for placement on those. Brev, what do you got about the schedule, either observations or questions for Sean?
Yeah, well, first of all, it sounds like you guys are keying in on Nashville, so might sound like we got to do one big trip / meetup, because
they know how to throw a party.
Hey, man.
Yeah, it's not close to me, but it's much closer than Minnesota is. So that's worth an 11-hour drive or whatever it is for me.
Tickets will be cheap.
Exactly. So you mentioned like games you were thinking about going to, and of course the divisional games. But before we have a schedule or anything, of course, what one matchup, and I have a feeling I know which one it might be. Which one, just in general, are you the most looking forward to, just from like a game sense, like matchup?
Matchup wise, I'm looking in division and I'm looking at the top dogs. I'm looking at the Lions and the Packers. Where do we kind of sit with those teams? Because I mean, obviously we took a hit, regardless of what you feel about Kirk Cousins. We took a hit, letting Kirk Cousins walk, and we
Yep.
obviously took a hit letting Danielle Hunter walk. Then again, we replaced those guys with 2 first rounders and JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner. So yes, we may have, we may lack a little bit in those positional departments, but we replaced it with supreme talent, especially Dallas Turner. I mean, people already know how I feel about JJ McCarthy, but for us to go back and get a guy like Dallas Turner, I think that puts us in a position to be like, wait a minute, we're not just going to be, a last place team in this division. I think we can really give it a run for the division, but we got to see where we're at against the Lions and the Packers. And I'm not going to throw the Bears in there because I don't believe in the Bears. I don't believe in Caleb Williams, to say the least. So, but Packers in that Lions game, in Lambeau, the Lambeau game against Green Bay, preferably. I think those are the games that I'm looking at saying, okay, how are we going to measure up to the top teams in our own division? And then we can go from there and say, all right, well, we're a playoff team. We can make a deep run, possibly, whatever it may be. But those are the two games that I'm looking for, both away in Detroit and in Lambeau.
Do you think, and the one I kind of, I'm happy that your answer wasn't this, but I think the one that most fans kind of look at is like, Kirk's coming back to U.S. Bank, that bastard. Do you think that that game is worth a prime time slot? Whether if it's Thursday night, sure, but do you think it's worth that?
Absolutely. You have to put that on prime time. You
Yeah.
have to. There's too many storylines in that not to have it in prime time. And if you were to ask me if I was creating the schedules and putting things together, just NFL wise, and I'm not just thinking Vikings wise or Kirk Cousins wise, if I'm just the NFL in general, I say, what's going to be a great week 1 Sunday night football matchup that everybody's going to want to tune into? Because not only is it 2 teams that got talent all over the field. Like, we're not even talking about Justin Jefferson right now and Jordan Addison, but you look at Atlanta with all the weapons that they have. They went out there, they gave Kirk Cousins $100 million guaranteed, not to come in and for them to be just a mediocre team. They brought him in just like when we brought Kirk in, to be that missing piece to be a Super Bowl contender. So why not week 1? Let's throw Kirk back in US Bank Stadium against the team that let him walk, that quote unquote didn't want him. And on top of that, Kirk has always had this prime time kind of cloud over him of he can't get it done in prime time. Well, here's your opportunity. If you're able to do it in prime time against your former team, the team that didn't want you, and you get it done and have a great performance, then you're, off to the races with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, all of a sudden, Atlanta is a Super Bowl contender. Kirk beat the primetime bug, this and that. Like, it just has too many storylines not to have that in primetime. I would say week 1 would be the perfect time to do it, but primetime in general, you got to put that game in prime. I don't see a way that the NFL doesn't put that game in primetime. They'd be stupid not to.
I agree, and I think even better than week 1, which again I completely agree. Week 1 would be like a super kind of cool time to do it. I think it would be even cooler if it's later in the season, like week 16 playoff chase, Minnesota and Atlanta. Maybe Minnesota's not in it, but they can hurt Atlanta, and maybe by that time JJ McCarthy is the starter. Don't know. I personally wouldn't play McCarthy at all this year unless everybody in the quarterback room gets injured again. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. But just thinking of that game like week 16, because I guess 17 and 18 usually we're playing divisional opponents, but week 16, Sunday night football, Monday night football, Kirk comes back to the bank. Yeah. He's playing his replacement. If McCarthy can knock them down a peg in playoff contention, that would be absolutely sweet.
I can see
That's
that.
fine. Yeah.
I can see that.
You're
Oh,
muted,
you're
Dustin.
muted.
What an amateur. The thing, so Brevin, we're gonna have a disagreement for these next 4 months. I am of the camp. I would start McCarthy sooner than later, because I think that he has the mental fortitude that even if he gets off to a rocky start, he's going to be nurtured by Kevin O'Connell. And I'm just ready. I would accept a 4-13 season because we still have the first rounder. And I'm kind of in that new era of start the guy, especially if he's ready. But what I will say is that you're going to be correct that I'm sure that they give Darnold the baton out of the gate, because this coaching regime, although bold and progressive, is going to be cautious. We saw how long they took to bring Jefferson back from a hamstring injury. So I'm going to guess that it's going to be Darnold. On Cousins, on the idea of him coming out of the gate and playing like Monday night or Sunday night football, how vicious would that be for that man? Because it's his old team. We already know that Kirk likes to prepare like a fiend, and even
on Tuesdays.
his worst worst season as a Viking was 2018, and that wasn't like bad, but it was just his worst season. I think it takes a while for him to get comfortable in an offense, so he'd have that strike against him. He'd have the whole. I'm guessing the Penix angle would be smoothed over by then. But out of all quarterbacks that are, QB1s established, Kirk is probably on the more insecure part of the spectrum in terms of his personality. He doesn't quite have that, nobody's taking my job. He kind of has the opposite. Like, everybody can get benched in this league. So it'd be really vicious for Cousins to have to go against his old team, against a weird narrative that says he can't win in prime time. And then with a new team that, very first out of the gate. And I would love to see it. And whether it was Darnold or McCarthy, I hope we just beat the shit out of those guys if that was the case.
Well, that immediately puts Kirk on, I don't know, the hot seat, but that immediately throws him into the fire week one. Because let's say, we may be getting deep into Kirk Cousins talking. I'm sure we'll cut it soon.
That's all right.
But, say he goes out there week one. It is a matchup against Minnesota on the road. And he has just an absolute terrible game week one on prime time. Because, you got to think, as soon as it may be one game, maybe 2 games, 3 games, to where we know Kirk, he can go on stretches to where he has kind of some mediocre games. And then he starts to heat up in October, Kirktober or Kirkvember, whatever it was last year. He can go on a run 4, 5, 6 games straight and just absolutely kill it. But he can also go on those cold streaks to where Kirk's not looking like, our normal Kirk or whatever. And obviously coming off an Achilles injury like this, you throw him immediately into the fire and he has a terrible game in primetime week one. Those Michael Penix birds are going to start coming out real soon.
Dirty birds, yep.
Yeah, those dirty birds are going to come out real soon. So I think, again, that adds another storyline, another, perspective to this week one possible matchup with the Falcons and the Vikings, to where there's a lot on the line in week one. So that's why I'm saying, if the NFL is really looking at what would be a great Sunday night football matchup, don't make it the Cowboys and the Giants. Nobody wants to see the damn Cowboys and Giants on Sunday night football every year on week one or week two. Leave that for middle of the season. The Giants suck. The Cowboys are probably going to suck too this year. We don't want to see that. We want 2 teams where there's going to have some storylines. There's going to be some drama behind the actual game. I think it just fits in perfectly to do that. And they did it with Russell Wilson and the Broncos against the Seahawks a couple years ago. It wasn't a primetime game, but they made that a week one game, and it was entertaining. Seahawks went out there and beat the Broncos, and
I think it was a primetime game.
The rest was history. Was it?
I think that was prime. I think it was a Monday night.
I'm pretty sure. It was. You're right. Yeah, it was a Monday night. It was a Monday night.
It was light outside because it was in Seattle, I think.
Yeah, that's right. It was it was 2 Monday night games, so it was an early Monday night game.
Yep.
And the problem for Kirk, the Falcons or Falcons fans, is they absolutely have the burden of proof to win that game. You're listening to a Vikings show in like the hardest of heart Vikings content, and we 3 are telling you that the Vikings are probably going to go about 7-10 this year with a ceiling of maybe 9-8 if Sam Darnold is like Baker Mayfield. Therefore, the Falcons should win that game. And it's just the expectation there makes it even more brutal for Cousins that, Minnesota kind of knows that it's going through a transformational year to get to the McCarthy era. So that makes it so Kirk and the gang has to go out and win. I mean, not that they're like bona fide Super Bowl contenders, but they're more all in right now than the Vikings are because of how the competitive rebuild has shaken down. Speaking of McCarthy, Sean, we had the NFL draft. It's about a week over now. 7 new players, 17 undrafted free agents. And I want to know, because we haven't talked any real draft stuff with you after the draft, tell me some of the excitement or elation you had coming out of the event. And if you had any reservations or eye rolls, what were those?
I mean, the first round was an absolute grand slam. You can put all the trading metrics and whatever sheet that they call that of, oh, well, the Vikings got robbed. They gave up way too much for a guy like J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner and this. You got to realize, before the draft started, all the talk was the Vikings are going to have to get into the top 5. They're going to have to jump the Giants if they want a chance at drafting J.J. McCarthy. We didn't have to do that. We sat back. We played it perfectly. They can say all they want about, the Vikings gave up a 4th and a 5th round pick to move up one spot. I'll give up those mid-rounders all day to get your quarterback of the future. And I think Brev, were you a Bo Nix guy? Or were you like, okay. I couldn't remember if you hated Bo Nix.
No, I think he didn't hate him as much as most guests.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think he was overhated.
I mean, it was either McCarthy or Drake May. Those were the 2 guys that we were going for from the jump. I don't think there was any question about it. We gave a shot at trying to get Drake May, and I'm glad we didn't give up the farm to do so. I mean, we kind of offered the farm in a sense. I believe we wanted to give up
3 and
11, 23, and then next year's first.
But we wanted pick swaps too.
With some late or mid-round pick swaps to where, I mean, we don't want to give up next year's first, but they were willing to do so to get a guy like Drake May, but the Patriots just wanted more. So I'm glad Kwesi in this front office said, you know what? We're not going to do that. We're not going to mortgage our future on a guy. Yes, we probably love Drake May, but we're not going to throw another first in there. That's enough. Let's hold pack. Let's see. It was a smokescreen, obviously, from the Giants, because I think the Giants
were right about that one.
We're sold on, we want Drake May. If Drake May's available, whether it's trading up, which I believe they tried to do as well, or if Drake May somehow fell to them, they would have taken Drake May. But they didn't. That whole J.J. McCarthy thing was a smokescreen. So I'm glad we held packed. He ended up falling to 10. Sean Payton, supposedly said that he baited the Vikings into trading up one pick, which I don't think any Vikings fan gives a damn. I don't think anybody cares about that 4th or 5th round pick. Nobody's complaining about that. Go up, get your guy. If somebody faked you out and you had to give up a 4th and 5th round pick, so be it. It's not going to matter if the guy ends up turning out. Nobody's going to look back 2-3 years from now and say, oh my God, J.J. McCarthy's 2 or 3 Pro Bowls in, but they had to give up an extra 4th and 5th round pick to move up a spot to get it. Nobody cares about that. We got our quarterback of the future in J.J. McCarthy. More than half the fan base wanted J.J. McCarthy. He's a perfect fit here. He's young, plenty of time to develop and kind of grow into his own. And then to just ice the cake, and if we just ended the draft after the first round, I think everybody would be happy. Like, if we didn't have any more picks for the rest of the draft, we got our quarterback, and then we filled the void that Danielle Hunter left when he left to Houston with a guy like Dallas Turner that a lot of national media pundits had as their number 1 defensive guy in this draft. And if you were to ask me who was the number 1 defensive guy in this draft, it was either between him or probably Byron Murphy II. And I would have preferred to have the interior defensive lineman, because I feel like we need more help on the interior defensive line. But to add another pass rusher of that stature and Dallas Turner, the best pass rusher in this draft, if you were to ask me, I don't care. You didn't give up another first round pick. I think we gave up like a 3rd and a 4th or 2/3 or something like that to move up 7 spots, I believe. So it was an absolute grand slam. So on top of the J.J. McCarthy, which is kind of an obvious one to me because I do have a little bit of bias. As you guys know, I'm a Michigan guy. So I was a little bit biased with that, but got to be happy with J.J. McCarthy. but ecstatic to have a guy like Dallas Turner in the first round. And just to see our front office and Kwesi making these big splash moves, it's like warming my heart. Like we're not used to making these big trade ups all the time. And it seems to happen once every 10 years for the Minnesota Vikings. We have, a ridiculous first round, or we trade back into the first round for a guy that we want, whether it be Teddy Bridgewater, or we have 3 first-round picks in Cordero Patterson, Xavier Rhodes, and Sharif Floyd. Seems like once every 8 to 10 years, we have one of these drafts where we make big splash moves. And this is our draft. We got our quarterback of the future, and we got our pass rusher of the future. Absolute grand slam in round 1 of the draft. So, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but those are the 2 guys that just stand out above all the rest for me.
Even though Sean Payton claimed credit for, hey, I tried to do that, the Falcons were more to blame for the Vikings trading up than the Broncos will ever be, because if the Falcons didn't do their voodoo and draft Michael Penix, the Vikings would have been in a spot to say, hey, this is pick number 9, pick number 10. We're either going to get McCarthy or Penix, who they evidently both enjoyed. And so Sean Payton can claim credit all he wants, but it was really the Falcons who screwed everything up, in a moment for like sheer pandemonium for a few of us who were like, what? They got a quarterback? Which quarterback is it?
Yeah.
And it turned out to be Penix, which we were like, woo! All right, thank goodness they did that. What about, did you have anything draft reservations that you wish they would have done, or was this just an absolute grand slam?
There's nothing that I disliked. I mean, drafting the kid Juergens, the center, I feel like we may have reached on him if I want to kind of critique and nitpick a little there. But I was so ecstatic with what we did in the first round. It sucked that we didn't have a day 2 pick. But to see what we got in the first round and not having to mortgage our future, not only for a quarterback, but to also fill that void at edge rusher too. It's just like, how could you not be happy? I mean, we got a kicker of the future, which I think is going to be great for us out of Alabama, Reichert. Who we got? Juergens. Who else did we pick up in the draft?
Kyrie Jackson, cornerback.
I like the Kyrie Jackson pickup. That's obviously a position of need. You can never have too many corners, but there's going to be a couple odd men out in that cornerback room, which is going to
cover
really
that substantially, because that's a really under the radar storyline. There's going to be 1 or 2 dudes that we know and love that are getting cut.
Yes, absolutely. And I like the pickup with Kyrie Jackson because he's a perfect fit with that Flores defense. That is obviously a Flores pick. A big, what was he, 6'2"?
I think he's 6'3", 6'4".
6'3", 6'4". Big guy. Had some time at Alabama, then went on to Oregon, to where man-to-man, big physical corner, that's exactly what we want. Let's hope he can tackle in open space, because that's something that Brian Flores' defense kind of requires you to do, especially when you're sending the house half the time. So I like that pick as well. That was a good pick, a position of need, and the guy that I actually like. We need a big physical corner. So again, this is Kwesi's best draft by far. By far. So I got a nitpick if I really want to find something that I don't like or that I kind of want to question. And the only question I would really have is the Juergens pick. And that, I mean, that's me.
That says a lot. If we're looking at late rounders going,
well, I'll say this. I wish we would have addressed the interior defensive line, because that's still a position of need for us right now.
Huge.
Huge position of need. And I can already see it in the season as we're going along. It's going to be a topic of conversation. The Vikings aren't going to be able to slow down the run. Teams are going to be able to run on us, plain and simple. So we got to be able to put up enough points, whether that be Sam Darnold or whether that be J.J. McCarthy, to put these teams in a position to where, hey, we can't just run the ball down their throats. We got to be able to, keep up with them score-wise. So, I mean, cross your fingers. But again, like Dustin said, if we have kind of a mediocre season or a 5-win season, I mean, we kind of just got to take that. We're working with a rookie quarterback or Sam Darnold, and we got our first-round pick next year. So we're kind of playing with house money this year.
I take solace in remembering that last year, outside of like that Eagles game right away, Flores' defense improved against the run compared to Donatel's. We went through that 3-year stretch with the death of Zimmer's defense, and then Donatel. where every time the running back got a carry, I'd be like, oh, 2nd and 4, here we go. And I used to cheer and get really excited when we had a 2nd and 6 because I was like, sweet, finally. And so last year, the Flores defense ended up ranking 6th best per rushing yards allowed. And that was with Harrison Phillips and Jonathan Buller, the same group. So even though they don't have a true space eater nose tackle, which they probably should have found, or at least a good 3-tech who can get after the passer, I'll look back to last year, and there was only a game or two where the run defense was utterly exposed, especially against the Eagles. That's the one that comes to mind.
But that was more of the quarter. I mean, the quarterback opened up the run game for Swift in that game. So it wasn't just they're running it down our throat with, every running back that they have, like the 49ers would.
Yeah.
But,
that was also the game where we just had everybody standing up. Like it was like, we didn't have any like defensive tackles
at all. Let's just
Flores
throw all safeties out there. Let's
throw Flores. I don't know what he was doing that night. All right, Brev. Final question for Sean. What do we got?
Yeah, I wanted to say that me and Sean are like completely in lockstep when it comes to the draft, because I know we were together on McCarthy being the guy, or May if you could get him. We were right with each other on that. Byron Murphy and Dallas Turner were the 2 best defensive players in this draft. Again, I was kind of bummed Byron Murphy got taken, but of course that's before we know we're trading up, and he wasn't going to fall to 23 anyway. We're in lockstep that the only pick was the Jurgens pick, but again, that was pick 230, so I'm really not losing sleep over it. And I kind of, the Kyrie Jackson pick, again, I was really, really, really excited about. I think he's going to be corner 4 or 5 right out of the gate, to be honest with you. And Dustin kind of alluded to it, like somebody that we know and maybe love. There's one of them I don't really love so much, but what, I guess this is less of a draft question, more of like a coming up question, just because I want your opinion on it. Who in the cornerback room, because something people have to take into account, like Najee Thompson is technically going to take like a cornerback spot because he's a special teamer. So like he's not going anywhere. I guess the safeties can be included too, because there's a certain former first rounder that might be on the chopping block this offseason, which I would be fine with, might as well. Who would be your surprise cut? And I guess that kind of boils it down to 2 corners, really, unless you want to include the safeties. But who would be your surprise cut to make room for Kyrie Jackson or even UDFA Dwight McGlothern?
I mean, the guy that you're alluding to, Lewisine getting cut. I'm sorry. If you're not, obviously you're not getting in on the defensive side of the ball. You're not even playing special teams. So I mean, what are you doing? So I don't know if he's eligible for the practice squad. We may try and squeeze him on the practice squad or something, but I think he's getting cut. Lewisine gone. As far as the cornerbacks go, I mean, it's got to be between, and I think we spoke about this on the last show we did together, Andrew Booth, which in the limited time that he did have, he played good when he was healthy. It's just about him being healthy. So I think what depends on him making the 53-man roster is if he can stay healthy this offseason. Can he stay healthy throughout training camp? Can he stay healthy throughout the preseason? And if I'm the Vikings, when preseason comes around, I am playing Andrew Booth from the first whistle to the last whistle. You're not getting, the accommodations of you being a first or a second round pick like you were before. We're just going to throw you out there for a little bit, get you some playing time, preserve you. There is no preserving Andrew Booth now. It's either you're going to stay healthy or you're not. So I'm playing him the entire preseason. I'm seeing what he provides for this football team. And if he can stay healthy, I think he makes this 53-man roster. Mekhi Blackman, he's going to make the roster. Obviously, Kyrie Jackson. Obviously, Shaquille Griffin and Byron Murphy. So Najee Thompson more than likely is going to make this roster because of special teams. And then that leaves, who else does that leave?
Caleb Evans.
Caleb Evans might be the one to go.
Yeah.
I think
he has the writing on the wall. From back-to-back benchings last year, he has the writing on the wall.
Exactly. It's between him and Andrew Booth's health. I'm not even going to say Andrew Booth. It's between a Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth's health of who's going to get cut. If Andrew Booth is able to stay healthy, Caleb Evans is out of there. And you drafted a guy that's kind of the same quote unquote type of corner as far as being a big, tall, physical guy. That's kind of what a Caleb Evans is supposed to be. And again, I know a lot of us aren't a big fan of a Caleb Evans. I don't have anything against him. I think he's a decent player, but he's very streaky to where he'll play really good for a game or two, and then he'll just fall right back into, oh man, a Caleb Evans just getting torched on the outside. So yeah, a Caleb Evans or Andrew Boothell, that's who's going to be cut from this team.
I would say the one thing, like a Caleb Evans is, in terms of just the corners, I think a Caleb Evans is like the easy release for me, because I think we know Jawan Williams and AJ Green the third, and I think Jalen Williams. I think they're either going to the practice squad or getting cut. So
Yeah.
Caleb Evans is my pretty easy, like, see ya. The one thing that I did, or I guess I still do, because he's still on the team, like about a Caleb Evans is he's very physical at the line of scrimmage. He kind of tackles like an idiot, but it works sometimes, and he's physical at the line of scrimmage against the run, I guess, and he's a decent kind of wrap up, hold on to the feet and pray for dear life tackler. But that's something. He's also a complete liability in coverage most of the time, which you alluded
He's
to.
Cam Dantzler.
Exactly. He is Cam Dantzler, and he's Cam Dantzler, but he makes TikToks.
Exactly.
But for that is something that Kyrie Jackson does really well. So that's even more evidence why I think the writing's on the wall. Like Kyrie Jackson is kind of like a piss missile playing against the run, attacking the line of scrimmage. I don't know if you saw that clip of him like running through a blocker and knocking the blocker into the runner behind the line for like a 4-yard loss when he was I think he was at Alabama in that clip.
As against Auburn, I think.
Yeah. But that's something like he can do what a Caleb Evans' strength is better than a Caleb Evans, I think, at the NFL level. As well as Kyrie Jackson. Again, NFL is a different ball game, but Kyrie Jackson did not let things behind him, at least last year at Oregon. He only allowed 180 receiving yards last year total. 97 of them, I think, were after the catch. So he's very physical at the point of contact. The ball comes his way, he's on it. So I don't know. I think Kyrie Jackson. I guess the easy three is like Murphy, Griffin, Blackman, and then I think Kyrie Jackson honestly can slot in at 4 or 5 pretty easily, and Caleb Evans, we'll see it. Thanks for your services.
The on other roster cuts for viewers to start thinking about, another one that might be a little eyebrow raising is edge rusher, and this is a good problem to have. Believe it or not, the Vikings have 7 edge rushers that Vikings fans can know by name recognition: Jonathan Greener, Dallas Turner, Andrew Van Ginkel, Patrick Jones, Jihad Ward, Andre Carter, and Gabriel Murphy, the new guy who's probably not going to get cut. And they don't usually carry 7 edge rushers to the regular season roster. The Zimmer era, there usually be 4, and there might be 5 or 6 here if you want to get sexy with your 53-man roster predictions. So that means that folks will have to start thinking about roster cuts for Patrick Jones or Jihad Ward on just kind of the Simpsons meme coming through the door and back out it, or Andre Carter. So yeah, we went from a spot 7-8 weeks ago going, Jesus, Danielle Hunter's going to leave. What are we going to do? To now thinking, oh God, who do we have to cut? And that's, again, a good problem to have. Kind of like too many defensive backs for the active roster. All right, Sean, will you come back about 4 weeks from tonight? And
Absolutely,
we'll start preview mini camp. Does that work for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, put it in the calendar, man. Let's make it a regular thing. I'm here.
All right, perfect. All right, Brev, anything else from you, man?
Oh, no, that's it. Sorry to all the Caleb Evans fans out there.
It's all good. All right, gentlemen, you have a wonderful rest of the weekend, okay?
Cool, you too, man.
Yep,
Peace.
later.